The moment I realized I had been tricked, the restaurant lights felt harsher, the air heavier, and my heart beat louder than the soft music playing overhead. I had walked in expecting an awkward evening with a stranger, a harmless blind date arranged by friends who thought I needed to get back out there. Instead, I found myself sitting across from the one person I never imagined sharing a table with like this, my best friend's ex. The woman whose name had once been spoken in hushed tones, wrapped in heartbreak, loyalty, and unspoken rules. In that instant, my chest tightened with confusion and guilt, and I knew this night would change something inside me forever, whether I wanted it to or not. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that life can surprise us in the most unexpected ways. Your support helps stories like this reach people who might need them most. My name is Daniel, and I live in a quiet Midwestern town in the United States, where people wave at stop signs and memories linger longer than they should. I had known Emily long before she became my best friend's ex. She had been part of our friend group for years, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke, who smiled with her eyes even when she was hurting. When her relationship with my best friend Michael ended, it ended badly, or at least that was the version I was given. Loyalty demanded distance, so I kept it. I chose silence over curiosity, avoidance over understanding. I never asked her side of the story, and eventually she faded into the background of my life like an old photograph tucked into a drawer. The blind date had been pitched as casual, anonymous, and safe. I had agreed because loneliness has a way of softening your principles when you least expect it. The past year had been heavy for me, filled with long workdays, empty evenings, and the dull ache of feeling left behind as friends built families and futures. I told myself this date was just a step forward, a way to prove I was still capable of trying. What I didn't realize was that everyone else seemed to know more about the evening than I did. As the night unfolded, I became painfully aware of the emotional minefield I had stepped into. Every familiar gesture, every shared memory hovering unspoken between us, made the situation more complicated. Emily carried herself differently than I remembered. There was a quiet strength in her posture, a calm resilience shaped by something deeper than time alone. I could sense that life had not been gentle with her since the breakup, and yet she sat there with grace, offering presence without expectation. That contrast unsettled me more than anger ever could have. The real struggle began after that night, when the shock wore off and reality set in. I felt torn between loyalty and curiosity, between the version of events I had accepted and the woman I was now seeing clearly for the first time. Michael and I had been friends since college, bonded by late-night talks, road trips, and shared failures. The idea of crossing an invisible line felt like betrayal, even if no rules had ever been spoken aloud. At the same time, something inside me whispered that life was rarely as simple as sides and stories. Over the next few weeks, our paths kept crossing in ways that felt both accidental and inevitable. Coffee shops, mutual friends gatherings, community events where polite nods slowly turned into longer conversations. Each interaction peeled back another layer of assumption I had been carrying. I learned about the quiet battles she had fought alone, the misunderstandings that had been allowed to grow unchecked, the way silence had been mistaken for guilt. None of it erased my loyalty to Michael, but it challenged the certainty I had clung to for comfort. Internally, I wrestled with fear more than anything else. Fear of hurting my friend, fear of being judged, fear of discovering that my feelings were real and complicated. I tried to convince myself that whatever connection was forming was temporary, born out of shared history and proximity rather than something meaningful. Yet the more I resisted, the stronger it became. There was a sense of ease with Emily that I couldn't explain, a feeling of being understood without needing to perform or defend myself. What surprised me most was how much the situation forced me to look inward. I began questioning how often I had accepted one version of the truth because it was convenient, how often I had chosen comfort over compassion. I realized that being a good friend didn't mean refusing to see others as human, flawed, and deserving of grace. The world had taught me to categorize people quickly, to label them based on past associations, but this experience challenged that habit at its core. The tension eventually reached a breaking point when Michael and I finally addressed the unspoken distance between us. I won't pretend it was easy. There were raw emotions, moments of silence that felt heavier than words, and the painful realization that time and life had already changed us in ways neither of us wanted to admit. What struck me, though, was that the anger I had feared wasn't as overwhelming as the sadness. We were both carrying old wounds, shaped by misunderstandings and pride, and neither of us had known how to let them heal properly. As weeks turned into months, the story shifted from conflict to growth. I watched Emily rebuild her life piece by piece, not through grand gestures but through consistency and self-respect. She volunteered at a local shelter, pursued passions she had once put aside, and learned how to stand firmly in who she was without needing validation. Being around that kind of quiet strength changed me. It softened my cynicism and reminded me that healing doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself every day. The question of whether to continue seeing each other lingered like a low hum beneath everything else. It wasn't about romance alone anymore. It was about integrity, forgiveness, and the courage to choose honesty over fear. I had to confront the idea that doing the right thing doesn't always mean doing the easy or expected thing. Sometimes it means trusting that love, in its healthiest form, doesn't thrive on secrecy or shame. When the moment finally came for clarity, it wasn't marked by fireworks or sudden certainty. It arrived quietly, in the understanding that life had already answered the question for us through consistency, care, and mutual respect. I realized that whatever path I chose, it needed to be rooted in truth rather than avoidance. For the first time in a long while, I felt grounded instead of conflicted, as if the noise inside me had settled into something resembling peace. If this story is resonating with you so far, if it's reminding you of a moment when life surprised you or challenged your assumptions, I want you to know you're not alone. Stories like this exist because real people live them every day, often quietly, often without recognition. The beauty of this experience wasn't that everything worked out perfectly, but that everyone involved grew. Michael found his own closure, confronting parts of himself he had avoided. Emily stepped fully into her worth, no longer defined by someone else's version of her story. And I learned that love, when it's real, asks us to be brave, honest, and compassionate even when the path forward feels uncertain. Just before the ending, I want to ask you something special. Please comment below with your thoughts, your experiences, or even just a single word that captures how this story made you feel. Your voice matters more than you realize. Near the end of that journey, when Emily asked if I wanted to keep dating, it wasn't framed as pressure or expectation, but as an invitation rooted in mutual respect and hard-earned understanding. It symbolized more than romance. It represented forgiveness, growth, and the courage to believe that people are more than their past mistakes. Saying yes meant accepting uncertainty, but it also meant honoring the truth we had discovered together. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel seen, hopeful, or reflective, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your interaction helps keep stories like this alive, reaching hearts that may be quietly searching for reassurance that second chances are real and that kindness still matters in this world. Sometimes the most meaningful relationships begin not with certainty, but with courage. And sometimes, being tricked into a blind date becomes the unexpected doorway to understanding, healing, and a future you never saw coming.